Award-winning futurist researcher, keynote speaker Nikolas Badminton joins us on Canada Now. And Nick, this week we examine the freedom of speech on social media.
Yeah, we've seen something really interesting happening over the last few weeks, especially since the U.S. election. We've obviously seen platforms like Facebook and Twitter really lock down some of the more, the conspiracy theorists, the right-wingers, the racists, and this is all good. This is all fantastic stuff. However, there's this new breed of platforms that are sort of coming to the forefront and really starting to act as new venues for these sort of free-form content creators, the conspiracy creators, the places that are going to be the new modern mental asylum for the so-called modern free thinkers.
Hadn't those places always been there? Because I was talking about this a little bit on yesterday's show, Nick, in talking about the rise, or as NDP leader Jagmeet Singh claims, there's a rise in hate groups in Canada. And I was talking with my terrorism expert, Phil Gursky, on the show yesterday, and he said, the internet's kind of like whack-a-mole. If those that you spoke of, Nick, were on Twitter and Facebook and expelled from there and couldn't impose their views there, well, they'll just find another venue in which to do that. Has it always been like this, or is it like this now more than ever, and is that trend going to continue?
Yeah, these people have always been out there on the internet. They've been on sort of the corners, the private chat rooms, the dark web. Like they're really out there. But what's been happening recently is there's platforms like MEWE, like Parler, like Rumble, which is like YouTube. Parler's like Parler is like Twitter, and MeWe is like something more akin to Facebook. And these are becoming hugely popular. They're becoming mainstream, and I think that mainstream and accessible. So there's been 4.5 million signups to Parler, which is a completely unfettered, unmoderated place for Twitter-like conversations since last Friday. So 4.5 million people. I signed up for it just to look in. As soon as I signed up, 3 or 4 pretty wild conspiracy theorists invited me to follow them immediately. Now, I haven't found much use there, but you can tell that as this gains some popularity and some momentum, it's going to be a real challenge because, you know what, the old adage of that journalism and journalists have been using, we don't make the news, we just report it. Now it's been flipped on its head, and it's like, okay, these places, they create the news, they report it, they accelerate it, and their echo chamber is leaking out into the real world, and this is hugely dangerous.
Wasn't there a site, and maybe you mentioned one of them, but wasn't there a site that ended up being used quite extensively by ISIS?
Yeah, so a few years ago, people were thinking, the world just can't be Facebook, and maybe there's something we can do to create independent social networks. And there was a platform called Diaspora that was created, and you could install it, you could create your own social network, and the promise was great, right? You had people like Zuckerberg from Facebook investing in it and whatever. But what was happening is it was getting replicated and being used for ISIS recruitment and some pretty nefarious stuff. And these kinds of independent platforms can definitely be weaponized to do some pretty terrible things in the world. So yeah, I mean, that was a few years ago. Again, I would say the majority of people on the street would never have heard of Diaspora. It's white labeled. It's used in these private forums, and it's used for radicalization. Now we've got a world of Rumble and Parler, for example, and these two platforms are really leaking into the mainstream, and that means that kids, adults alike, are going to be thinking, you know what, this is as valid as any of the sort of other platforms where there is moderation and the truth does will out. Because I think that Facebook and Twitter and those platforms have definitely put a lot of time and effort into moderation. Platforms like Rumble and Parler, it's not their MO. So why spend the money and the time to moderate something that's just a free-form collection of people that want to have, inverted commas, free speech?
Do the number of like sites, apps, or what have you? Nick, are you still there? I dropped. I thought I heard something. I wanted to ask Nick because, we'll get him back just for a quick second. I think I got one more question to ask him. Thank you, Scott, back at Sirius XM Central. I want to talk to him about, given that, there's a change in leadership, like with the change in leadership, are we going to see not just this change in leadership, but the pendulum always swings back and forth here in this country, in the U.S. It's going to be Democratic for some time now. Is the pendulum going to swing back? Oh, Nick Badminton rejoins us on Canada Now. And Nick, what I wanted to continue with and ask you about was we've seen, or we are seeing, maybe we're seeing a change in leadership in the U.S. That's a whole other topic. But assuming Biden is going to be taking over the White House in January, as he's been elected to do so, a change in leadership. And we've talked about it in the past where you see that happen, and then there's like a bit of panic with, I think we echoed it back to when Obama had taken over the White House, that those that lobby for guns, that they're going to buy up a lot of guns because they feel that their rights are about to be taken away. With having the freedom of speech and having your say, and seeing a change in leadership in government, does that only multiply the opportunities and the times that we would see new forums, new apps, new platforms, what have you, come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. If we see a right-leaning leadership that's stoking up its followers to have more extreme values and more sort of defiance of the truth, absolutely, yeah. This is the time when people will build these platforms, because if you can get the eyes and ears of a nation, whether that's the US, Canada, nations across Asia, or whatever, if you can get those eyes and ears, you can monetize it, and you can realize business from a monetary standpoint, right? And that's what this is all about. This is like build community, monetize community, move on to the next thing. And now we've got to the point where it's like right-wing conspiracy theory communities that are going to be monetized, and the people within that are going to monetize their own, viewership and, build their own influencer networks to make money. And they'll make money by, walking around in the open, talking about things that are not true, stoking up that bad sentiment. And this is actually a bad thing for the world. And there's no way to police this. This is completely freeform. So, we've all got a duty now to make sure that we call out what's true and what's not true, and not feed into the machine that's really starting to unbundle what the world should be operating like.
Well, and look, talking about Trump right now, and what's going to happen with him post-January, and what he's going to be doing from now until then, people voted for him. He does have a voter base, not enough of it to get him a second term, but nevertheless, they're sitting there. And from now until he exits the White House, he can do everything he can to really galvanize his base while they're just sitting there, and talk of him starting up his own network and kicking tires on that. One would think that he's got an entire following and audience sitting right there that he can begin to monetize and play to.
Yeah, absolutely. I truly think that this this is going to be the first president in the history of the United States that's not going to just retire and stay silent. He's not going to get out of the way. He's going to be there stoking the fires of this kind of crazy conspiracies out there.
Check out NikolasBadminton.com, futurist researcher, keynote speaker, Nikolas Badminton. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll do it again in a week.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, pal.